cup at a time. Yeah, this is tea time. Yeah, making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome. And we are back for the last tea time of the day. That's right. Nighttime tea time, evening tea time, wherever you are, maybe morning it where you are tuning in from. But we are here, and I have Dr. Roger Leslie in the background sitting, and we're going to spill a good, strong TEA together. So we're going to jump into the disclaimer, the bios, and all that good stuff. And I want everyone to share this tea time. And if you have any comments or anything, put them in the comment section or directly email or send Miss Liz a message during the live show, and I will get those questions out to Dr. Roger Leslie. And we will have a good, strong tea tonight on July 6th, 2023. Like, who knew, right, that we would make it to July? I didn't. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's live tea time live shows. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any tea time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All tea time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I'll respect your wishes and see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all tea time shows are hosted on Thursday in 2023, unless it's a rescheduled tea time. Then it'll be a Monday or a Tuesday. So now let me give you a little bit on Dr. Roger Leslie. Who is Dr. Roger Leslie? Wow. This man is a scholar in the field of success in education through major literacy houses, medium and small presses, and his own publishing house. Leslie has published fiction and nonfiction books in multiple genres: historical fiction, inspirational, self-help, spiritual writings, and publishing movie references, teaching and librarianship, biography, history, and memoirs. Leslie has won numerous national awards, including ForeWord Book of the Year, the Ben Franklin Award, and Writer's Digest #1 Inspirational Book of the Year. At its inauguration event, Leslie received the Houston Literacy Award for his body of work. And for his full bio, you can check out Miss Liz's Facebook page. Let me get Dr. Leslie in here, and we can have a good cup of strong tea, and I can have a sip of tea. So let me get him in here. Welcome, Dr. Roger.
Hi, Liz. How are you?
I am good. That's a lot of words there. My tongue is like going crazy today. So, Dr. Roger, uh, let's get into who you were as a little boy and who you are now. And then we're going to get into the stories and into some flying, into some clarity. We're going to get into a lot of things tonight with Dr. Roger. Can you hear me, Dr. Roger?
Yes.
Oh, so can you share a little? Can you share a little bit with us who you were as a little boy and who you are now?
Sure. Just so you know, sometimes your screen is freezing up on me a little bit. So I don't know if you know, I don't know if you're aware that that's happening, but it seems to be freezing a little bit. But yeah, so I'd love to talk about myself, and I hope to inspire people to live the life they dream. So I grew up in a suburban area, a middle-class suburban area. And the struggle that I had as a youth was that I was a very adult-pleasing child. I did everything that I knew to do to please my parents and my teachers. But I realized early on that something was different about me. It turns out that I was gay, and even as young as a toddler, I knew something was a little different, and I really struggled with how is it that I could behave as I was behaving, follow all the rules, do everything that I was asked to do to please the adults in my world, and being gay negated all of that. And so that was a huge struggle for me, and that taught me how to figure out for myself who I am and how to really be true to what I thought my spirit was asking me to do in this lifetime.
So, Dr. Roger, what age were you when you realized?
From the time that I was a toddler, I knew something was different. I related to women differently. I loved the company of women. I enjoyed being around my mom and my aunts and the women in our neighborhood. I just thought I was more mature than most boys at first. But as I reached puberty, there was a transition that other boys went through where their relationship with women changed. And that's the point at which I realized, oh, I wasn't just more mature than other boys, but that my life was taking a different course.
And you wrote a memoir calling "The Light Coming Out of the Closet." Is that based on your story?
That is, the title is Light Come Out of the Closet. It just came out last month. Yes, and it's already a bestseller. It's doing very well, I'm proud to say. And it is the story of that struggle. It takes place from the time I was about 11 till I was about 17. And it was that spiritual journey through the dark night of my soul, because I became very withdrawn, very afraid that people would figure out who I was when I didn't know what to do with that knowledge. And what I was learning, because I grew up in the 60s and 70s, what I was learning at the time from my family, from my religion, and from my society made me think that it was wrong. I was wrong. I was a mistake. Something was not right about me. And it was a very difficult struggle, because throughout my childhood, I had a very committed relationship to what I understood God to be. And I wanted to make what I thought was God proud of me. And to have that blow up because of who I was, not because of anything I chose and not because of any behavior, it confused me, it frightened me, but it led me into an internal journey that required me to figure out who I was and what I was going to do with my life, because it really was a do or die situation, in that I became suicidal. I mean, I was just so depressed and withdrawn and lonely that, I did not ever actively pursue the effort of trying to commit suicide, but I knew early on that I wanted to be a writer. And I realized in retrospect that I was funneling a lot of those thoughts and feelings through the characters that I was writing about, because at the time I was writing stories and screenplays that included characters who were thinking of committing suicide.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about mental health, because a lot of friends that I have that have come out, and family members who have come out, they struggle with mental health. So is it because of the judgment? Is it because there's so much stigma based on it?
I can only speak for myself, but for me, that was it. Because as I describe in the memoir, Light Come Out of the Closet, um, the signals that I was getting from my world was that there was so much judgment around it that if people knew who I was, they would hate me. And this included the people I loved the most, the people I was closest to. And I transferred that awareness into a belief that it would mean God would hate me too. And that was the biggest struggle, because in order to live my life, in order to be who I am, in order to have some meaningful content in my life, I really needed to set things right spiritually so that I could feel okay about what my life was all about.
Well, and you had a lot of religion around it too when you came out, correct?
Yes, yes. I was raised Catholic and I went to a parochial school and I got a fantastic education. I really admire mostly nuns. I was taught by mostly nuns, but the women who taught me throughout my grade school and early high school years, I had a wonderful education that I'll always be grateful for. But in that very small enclave of that slice of the world, there wasn't much diversity. So I didn't have exposure to different ideas, different ethnicities, different concepts. So it wasn't until, and I really think it was moving from Michigan to Texas with my family when I was 14 that saved my life, because I had handled things so poorly in my freshman year in high school because all I did was withdraw and hide and didn't make connections because I was afraid people were going to figure me out. That when my dad told us we were moving to Texas, I know many teenagers at that age would be devastated by the fact that they've got to leave their life and start over again. But for me, it was a chance to start anew. It was just like, wow, I handled things so badly. I can now move to Texas and do things differently. And when we came to Texas, I went to a public school, which was diverse. It was much larger than the Catholic high school I went to in Michigan. And there was ethnic diversity and cultural diversity, and it just opened the world to me in ways that I'm so grateful, because it was a whole different kind of education that helped make me who I am today.
Well, and that's the first time I hear that the public school was full of diversity. I went to a public school growing up in Canada here, and I never looked at it that way. But now when I look back, now that you say that, I'm just like, yeah, they were pretty diverse. There was a lot of different backgrounds and ethnic cultures that were accepted in the public school. So yeah, that's eye-awakening for myself, because when you said that, I was like, I went to public school and I never looked at it that way, but it was true. We had a lot of diversity in public school. So for you, moving to Texas saved your life.
I think it did.
And you were able to start fresh, right? So is that where you came out in Texas?
Yes. So we moved when I was 14, just before I turned 15. And I think my coming out story from my perspective is a little unique, because when I was about 16 or 17, I realized that I am gay and I am going to explore what that means. And so when I was a senior in high school, in the spring of my senior year, I sat my parents down and I came out to them. I told them, I've never done anything with anybody. I've never explored this, but I'm going to. And I want you to hear this from me, because I didn't want them to hear from somebody else if anybody had ever seen me out or doing anything, being in a group of people that seemed unfamiliar to my parents. So even before I came out to anybody, publicly, or even, tried meeting any other gay people, I told my parents that I'm certain that this is who I am, and I have not explored it, but I'm planning to, and I just wanted them to know ahead of time.
So we have a question here for you, Dr. Roger.
Yes.
When you shared with your parents, what was their reaction?
It was a very difficult experience for all of us. My parents are private people, and so I think the shame that they felt in relation to it is something that they never quite let go of. My dad is still living, and we have a great relationship. My mom died in 2016, and I've always been very close to my parents. but there's an element of my being gay that, even though I've been married to the same man for nearly 40 years, he's a wonderful man, a minister, a school counselor, just a great human being, and they've loved him and they've embraced him. When it comes to publicly acknowledging that we're together, I think it's still a struggle for them. So that conversation was very difficult. Interestingly, though, this is one thing that came to light when I was writing the memoir. My mother, I had a hard time saying the words when I came out to them. So I just sat there trying to figure out how I was going to say it. And my mother said, "Oh, are you gay?" So she figured it out. But when I saw my dad's reaction and what my dad said afterwards, I realized that my parents never even talked to each other about it. It was that big of a secret in their minds that they couldn't even talk to each other about it. And that's been a struggle.
So do you think now, 40 years later, Dr. Roger, that it's a lot easier for people to come out to their families?
I think it's different in that when I was growing up, we didn't have many role models that I could find easily. You know, there weren't many movies that had positive representation of gay people. On TV shows, it was very rare. And so I think many people in the circles that I grew up in, they didn't know they knew any gay people. So in that regard, it might be easier for some gay people, but there are whole new sets of issues with social media and everything that can make it more difficult, that I have no way to know how hard that must be for some young people and even people my own age who are just now coming out. So I don't know that it's easier now, but I do think the challenges are different.
So do you think by coming out that you've helped other people with your book to come out?
I hope so, because that's the whole point. And some people have asked me, because, the story takes place when I was 11 to 17. And so that was so many decades ago. And people say, well, why now? Why did you decide to write that now? So here's how it came about. For many years, I think of that stage in my life as a very painful experience, especially my freshman year in high school and how difficult all that was. So I didn't think about it much because I associated it with the emotional pain that I was going through. And then it occurred to me that rather than holding on to negative thoughts or being afraid of the thoughts that I had about that stage in my life, what if I examined it to see what gifts it held for me? And I came to realize that although I grew up Catholic and I ended up leaving Catholicism very early because it wasn't a good fit for me, and I'm not saying that's not a good fit for anybody, but for me personally, it wasn't good for my journey. I realized how powerful a moral foundation that church gave me. It gave me some decisiveness, along with my family example and the society that I was growing up in. That religion really gave me a sense of discipline and expectation of how I can succeed and what I should be doing with my life that I owe a lot to. So rather than dismissing it as, oh, that was not a good fit for me, that wasn't good for me, I came to realize through the writing of this book what a blessing it was that I had that background, because it gave me some skills that I might not have gotten otherwise to help me through this journey.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, do you look on religion as as a punishment, or can you still go to church?
Actually, yes, I've been very active in churches my whole life. As I mentioned previously, my husband is a minister. He was a Methodist minister, and then he left the ministry and went back to get his teaching certification so that he could have summers and weekends available with his children. And that's where Jerry, my husband's name is Jerry Roberts. Jerry and I met at the University of Houston in one of our education classes. And we were just friends for a year. We were just getting to know each other, but then things blossomed from there and evolved into a relationship. And then by the time Jerry and I got together, one thing that I thought I was going to have to give up that I'd always wanted was being a dad. And here I ended up with Jerry, and our kids, Corey and Rebecca, were 5 and 3 when Jerry and I got together. So I had no idea the blessings that were coming around for me. But Jerry did leave the Methodist ministry. He became an educator, but we went to different churches looking for a place where we could fit in together. We wanted to be able to find a spiritual home where we could be ourselves and be together. And we ended up finding a church called Unity, which is a Christian church, a denomination. And it's not an exclusively gay church by any means, but it was a place that was very inclusive and accepting. And turns out Jerry ended up becoming a senior minister at a local Unity church and just retired from that job after 15 years last year. So I do distinguish between religion and spirituality. For me, spirituality is paramount. Religion can support that in certain ways, but I don't necessarily feel I need religion all the time to get that spiritual growth. But the spirituality to me is a cornerstone of who I am.
Yeah, you're really big on spirituality, because when I did a lot of homework on you, I seen that with the clarity and the desires and the dreams and the soar like an eagle, the freedom, and religion has really opened its eyes, I find, in the last 10 years towards, people coming out. There's no more that stigma of you can't come to this church, because there was a time where people were like that. If you came out, you were not allowed in the church. You were, you were shamed. You were called, possessed by the devil. Like, there was a lot of name calling, a lot of shame put on and guilt, right? Yeah. And I think in the last 10 years, I've noticed, since the LGBTO, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, has come out and expressed, and people are more coming out on their individuality. They are able to attend church again. They are able to feel more at home, because for me, I go to church, but it's not for the religion. It's for the connection, the worship, the getting to know people, and that community. For you, Dr. Roger, what is it when you go to church? Is it the worship? Is it the connection? Is it the, joining together? Like,
it is the sense of community more than anything for me. We've made some wonderful friends over the years through the churches that Jerry has served and the churches that we've been involved with. So yes, I mean, I do find that my spirituality is spiked while I am at church. There are times that I get creative ideas for my writing just during a church meditation or during a song or something, or even during the message. And so I always have a little notepad with me, because if I get an inspiration of some kind for one of my spiritual books, I'll write it down in the instant. So I do think there is an element of that. I do think that going to church does feed that spiritual hunger in me. But like you, I do like the sense of community. I like to find people that I have something in common with, and it's usually a positive, supportive environment, which I think is important.
Well, and it's a way of connecting with the community as well, because you can make the friendships and, outside of the church. You don't have to go to church just to see these people. You can actually have a relationship with them outside of the church.
Yes.
So, Dr. Roger, what chapter of Light Coming Out of the Closet was the hardest for you to write?
It was all very cathartic. So there were some chapters that were very emotional. The climactic scene where I have an epiphany that changes everything, it was the most emotionally draining to write. But I don't think it was hard. I don't necessarily think it was difficult or more difficult than any other chapter. It's just that it took the most emotional energy to dig deep enough to share honestly what I went through, and then to express it in such a way that other people can appreciate what it is I went through.
So I want to get into other books that you've written, because that's your latest book. But you started writing. The first book I found was 2015, and that is in the video. And that book was called First Day Last Year.
My first last year.
My first last year.
Yes.
So that was, and from what I got from that book was, what would you do if you only had 1 year left to live, correct?
So here's how I got the idea for that book, Liz. I had a dream, and in the dream, I was told to live the next year as if I would never experience any of those 365 days again. I wasn't necessarily told I was going to die, but I was told to put everything into my life that I could in that year in case that was it and I had no more. And beyond that, I was to write about, journal, and to write about what I was living that year. And then afterwards, teach others how to get the most out of their life as well. And so that's what I did. I woke up that morning, I jumped out of bed, ran right to the computer. I wrote down every detail of the dream as explicitly as I was told it. And then that morning, I began living what became to be known as my first last year.
So did you like journal every day for this book? Like how was that book written?
So for the first, I'd say 4 to 6 months, yes, I journaled every single day. But then there was a block of time when I realized that there were certain experiences, there were certain goals I set. For example, one of my dream trips was to take a Mediterranean cruise. And I did that in the summer. Jerry and I took his parents with us, and the 4 of us went on a Mediterranean cruise. And rather than journal about that every single day, I thought, well, if something really significant happens, I'll jot it down, I'll write about it. But in general, I didn't feel like I needed to write every single day, because over those first few months, I realized that there were some concepts that were becoming repetitive that I would want to modify a little bit. So most days I did journal, but there are chunks of time where I encapsulate what I learned so that it doesn't become cumbersome to readers.
And that one came out in 2015. So if anybody would like to grab a copy of that book, they can get that on Amazon as well. I want to talk about the fly. I found this fly on your website, and then I was like, oh, so that's where the soar, a dream to soar. And I was like, that's where the eagle comes in. That's where he's flying. So I want to talk a little bit about the fly, because you have fly right, fly Earhart, fly Army Strong, and then shepherd your flight. I want to talk about that, because that's kind of like a teaching or workshop, correct?
Yes, it's a personal growth workshop.
So I want to talk a little bit about that.
So here's how it came about. So very often I was journaling about my first last year longhand. Like when I was not home, I would have a tablet with me and I would just write. And I kept writing first last year, when I was in the course of writing something longhand, and writing the words first last year became kind of cumbersome. So as I was writing it longhand, I decided just to abbreviate it, and first last year became FLY, fly. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's my metaphor. I've got it. And that's how fly came about. And so when I decided to create the classes based on that experience to help other people get the most out of their life, I thought, I've got the perfect metaphor. I'm going to help people to fly.
I love it, because you get the metaphor. You get it. And I think that's where you understood the T. When I came to you with the T, you understood it, how the T came. It's the metaphor of our purpose in life, the passion in our life. And sometimes, it's the little words that get us all the time. So I want to get to know, what is Dr. Rogers' T? So if I give you the word TEA, what words do you have for me? For
the first word, I think thorough. It's important. If you want to live the life you dream, you've got to be thorough. And by that, I mean, you've got to dig deep into your life and who you are and figure that out for yourself. There are people who can be role models. They can inspire you. They can empower you. And they can be models for who or what you might become. But mostly, you just need to live your life thoroughly and just plow through and continue forward on a specific journey until you get the insights that you need or you arrive where you want to arrive. So for the T, I would say definitely be thorough.
So what you got for the E and the A?
For E, stay engaged. And that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from living my first last year. I've always been very goal oriented. I was a school teacher for many years, and I taught senior English, high school English. And I realized early on that students didn't necessarily have the same passion for reading and writing that I did, but I also realized they didn't need to. But because I taught seniors, I realized this was the last opportunity they would have in a free education setting to be given the tools to be successful no matter what they pursued. And so what I began doing early on is teaching students how to set goals, how to follow through, how to learn from the advances you make and the setbacks that you encounter. So as I was living my first last year, I realized that it was about much more than being goal oriented. It wasn't about just achieving so much and doing so much and living fast and getting it all done and completing everything. It was more about being engaged, being present, looking at people when you talk to them, listening completely when you're with somebody to try to hear not only what the words they're saying mean, but what is the message? What is their perspective on the world that's revealed through those words? And that's where I believe we become most alive, is when we're present. You know, it isn't the number of minutes we're living, it's how minutely we pay attention to those minutes that we have. And so living my first last year helped teach me to be engaged, to stay really present and focused and in the moment, because we're always aware that this may be the last moment I have like this. You know, I've had so many experiences with people where the last time they saw somebody was the last time they saw them. And I think about that often. I have several older relatives. You know, I visit my dad regularly. He just turned 92. I have several relatives in their 90s. When I visit them, it's easy for me to think, wow, this may be the last time I see them, especially, you know, if I'm visiting them out of town and I only see them once a year. But I've had other experiences where there were people my age or younger who, you know, they're just gone. And as importantly, I've also known people who have become ill and are just not physically able to do what they wanted to do. And so it's not just the thought that we might die one day, which we all will, but it's the fact that we don't know what the future holds. And so we must live life and stay engaged right now.
And what you got for the A?
A, become aware. As we're engaged, if we become aware, we know who we are, and then we're able to be more accepting and loving to other people. I think that's the whole quest that we're all on in this life, is to figure out who we really are and why we're here. And if we can figure that out and have a good relationship with ourselves, then I think our tendency is to learn how to love other people instead of judging other people or feeling a sense of competitiveness or judgment against others. Instead, everybody around us is a mirror of what's going on inside of us. Everybody around us has something to teach us. The ones that we love and admire, they can teach us something that we want to learn. There are others that challenge us, that they may be teaching us in a way that we're not comfortable learning, but they are teaching us something as well. And it's usually the conflict that provides the most teaching. So when we're in conflict about anything, either inner conflict or global conflict or interpersonal conflict, that's there because it's teaching us something valuable that if we just get it, the conflict is gone. If we become aware enough to figure it out and see what's going on in us, then the conflict is gone. We reach a new plateau in our spiritual evolution, and it's time to move forward in our journey.
And all my guests today have shown me the perspective of being aware of who we truly are. You know, have that courage to say, this is who I am. You know, look in the mirror, this is who I am. You know, look in the mirror, this is who you are. And I think being transparent and being open and honest with ourselves, we actually do soar like eagles, like we do fly, we do grow, you know, and we do transform lives that way. And the tea, that's the first time I've gotten that tea. So I'm like, that's a really strong tea. Roger. Like I think you came prepared to serve a strong tea tonight. So for anybody that's out there that's listening or that will watch the replay later, by writing your memoir, what was the message that you wanted to put out there?
For Light Come Out of the Closet or for My First Last Year? Because they're both memoirs.
For both of them. We'll go with the light coming out of the closet first, and then we'll jump to the other one.
So for Light Come Out of the Closet, one of my purposes was to help other gay people realize that they didn't necessarily need to throw out their spirituality and their religion in order to be happy and fulfilled. I think from my experience, it's been a common practice of many gay people because they've been so hurt by people in religions that it's just easy to think, oh, well, this is just not a good fit for me. I hope one of the outcomes of Light Come Out of the Closet is it invites people, not just gay people, but all people, to explore their own spiritual path and to come to terms with their path is unique to them. And if you can just embrace who you are and the path that you've chosen, you will gain so much more and you will live so much more fulfilled than you would if you keep thinking, oh, there must be more, or I must be on the wrong track, or this isn't for me, or, I don't count because I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too gay, to whatever stereotype we might throw in there, but instead just to say, this is who I am, and explore that possibility and allow ourselves to embrace the spiritual side that is the abstract teacher that gives us the insights that can make all the difference in our world.
Any other book?
And for My First Last Year, my purpose was I want people to live fully aware and conscious and engaged and in love with life right now. My mission in life is to inspire people to live the life they dream and to empower them with the courage to follow their own spiritual path. And I hope both of those books do that, but in a more direct way, that was the purpose of My First Last Year. And I feel as though that dream was given to me as one of the most profound gifts I've ever received, because it just told me what to do. It said, live this way for a year, write about it, and then teach others to do it. There couldn't have been a more direct and profound lesson I could have ever received than to be told that directly in a dream. It wasn't even an abstract dream where I had to figure out the symbolism. It was just the spiritual message spelled out for me.
So when you're also a keynote speaker, Dr. Rogers. So when you go and you present and do a presentation, what are you speaking on?
I speak on a variety of topics, as you mentioned in my introduction. So I write movie reference books. I'm a huge movie fan, and I have it's funny. I memorize lots and lots of facts about movies and award-winning performances and everything. There have been two extremes. There are some people who have called me, my mind is a compendium of knowledge of the film industry. On the other extreme, some people said I have all this useless trivia stuck in my head and I will talk about the subject ad nauseum. So one of my keynote speaking themes is I can relate a movie award presentation to any topic. So I've spoken to like the people in the oil industry. I talk about movies like Giant and There Will Be Blood and movies that relate somehow to their industry. I've talked to people in the health professions where I talk about award-winning movies that deal with doctors and nurses and hospitals. I've talked to garden clubs, just a little bit of everything. So those are the really fun, lighthearted keynote speeches that I'm often asked to do. I do a lot of writing conferences because I am an author, a writing coach, an editor, and a publisher. I publish other people's books. So I ask to speak at a lot of writing conferences. So some of the keynotes are about writing and publishing. And then thanks to my work with Fly and the work that I've done with teenagers over the years, because one of my books is called Success Expressed for Teens. I speak to a lot of groups, sometimes adults, sometimes educators, and sometimes the students themselves about setting goals, living the life you dream, being a good leader. I speak at colleges and junior colleges to their leadership groups and how to be good leaders and how to really get the most out of life. So it's a variety of different topics that I'm a keynote speaker for, just depending on what part of my biography people want to capitalize on.
Yeah, because you have an incredible bio. Like
Thank
you've
you.
done a lot. I want to talk a little bit. If you notice in the video, I created your own Ben Franklin Award, and I tried to find Ben Franklin, and I found him on dollar signs. And I was like, you know what? He has his Ben Franklin Award. I want to talk to him about it a little bit. So, what is the Ben Franklin Award?
So it is a national award that's given in several different categories. I won a silver Ben Franklin Award in 2004 for Success Express for Teens. And that was the book that is the activity book to help teenagers learn how to set goals, figure out their priorities, discover what their values are so that their actions match their goals in life. So the Ben Franklin Award is a national award given in New York City. So my publisher flew us up to the award ceremony. We didn't know at the time whether I was going to win any of the awards, but I did end up winning the silver Ben Franklin Award. And I also received a ForeWord Magazine award for that same book.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
There's so many different awards out there, that I'm learning from all of my guests. And I'm like, wow, really? And I really wanted to honor you with that award. And that's why I worked really hard. I found the award image, and then I was like, I got to find a Ben Franklin picture. So if anybody knows who Ben Franklin is, he's on the dollar sign. So, so you've also won the Reader's Digest first #1 inspirational book of the year. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that one?
Here's the message that I'd like to give with that answer. Always follow through on your intuition. It's never too late for anything good to happen to you. So here's what was happening. So I'd written several books since my first last year, and I hired a young woman, a college student, to research different book awards because I wanted to apply for several of these awards. Usually the rule is that the books that are eligible have to have been published the current year or the previous year. So she did this beautiful spreadsheet for me, this Excel spreadsheet, giving me all these different awards that I got to look up and figure out which my books could, of those current books that I could apply for some of those awards. There was one that was from Writer's Digest, and Writer's Digest is a very prestigious organization. When I was in my 20s, I belonged to the Writer's Digest book club, and I was getting a new book of the month, about writing. They were giving all these different, providing all these different books about writing and everything. So in the description of that award, it says, we accept any manuscript that's been published within the last 5 years. Well, I looked at the publication date of my first last year, and it had been 4.5 years since it had been published. So I thought, wow, this is my last opportunity. Let me just, throw caution to the wind and let's just try. What could it hurt? There's an entry fee with all these awards, of course. So it cost me an entry fee, and it took me the time to fill out the paperwork and send it in. I sent it in, not knowing what was going to happen. And lo and behold, a few months later, they sent me notification that it was voted the #1 inspirational book of the year, which is one of the biggest honors I've ever received for any of my books. So I want to encourage people, if you think it's too late, if you think you've waited too long to learn something or try something or achieve something, I'm here to tell you it's not too late. Follow through. When the opportunity shows up, my biggest one of my #1 tenets in life is take inspiration to action. If you get inspired to do something, take immediate action and watch where life leads you. It's going to be so exciting and rewarding.
Well, you just never know where it takes you, right? Unless you try. You really just got to try.
And that's the adventure. That's what makes life an adventure. And we all have insecurities. We all have fears. There's always that sense of, well, I'm not enough in some way, or I don't know if I have the courage to do that. But the minute you start exercising your courage, emotional exercising is just like physical exercising. If you don't do it much, when you first get to it, it's a little bit painful and a little bit overwhelming and you're sore afterwards. But then once you're in the momentum of it, then like exercise, where your body starts craving the physical routines, once you start exercising your courage, you can't wait to do something else. You can't wait to move to that next step or do something out of your comfort zone that can make an impact for you and for others. And tying this back into the fly courses, that's a lot what we talk about. It's just like there are 3 areas that we focus on. 1, what are you going to do for yourself? 2, what are you going to do for your loved ones? And 3, what legacy do you want to leave this world? So that when you're gone, what good you've done continues to perpetuate in some way. And that only happens if you have the courage to try something when the opportunity shows up.
And there we go. There's that word courage. I said it this afternoon with Bracha, and I said it this morning. The word courage is there. You have to have a courage to invest in a relationship, and you have to have the courage to go out and do something different. And again, tonight, courage, the word courage is just out there. We need to have courage. We need to really just try stuff. And I say it all the time to all of my guests. If you don't try, you don't know. Right.
Right.
And I'm the lady that serves tea. Like, if you don't try, you don't know. So, and you go back to the fly and it's 3 letters. It's just like the T, it's 3 letters. For me, 3 is really a strong number, but it's also like a triangle, right? You have to start at the top. You got to go down to the bottom and then back, So when you think of fly, do you think of fly as wide open, or I'm going to fly a little, take a break, and then fly a little bit more? How do you look at fly?
So once you're in flight in any area of your life, you soon discover that most of the energy is not coming from you. You're riding the waves of air that are already put before you. I have a strong belief that when you are inspired to do something that feels like the beginning of something for you, it's really not. Before you ever get inspired to do anything, life has already set up all the circumstances and the people you need to achieve exactly what it is you want. But we don't know that until we take flight. So you've got to just take that leap and spread those wings and give it a try. You won't know until you're doing it. And once you're there, that's when you realize that all that extra effort of wing flapping, if we're going to continue the metaphor, and all that exertion is not necessary because the winds are already there. You're just catching a wind and gliding along on it, and it's taking you exactly where you need to go next.
Right. And sometimes you just never know where it's going to take you. You're like, where am I going with this?
Exactly. And that's the most exciting part, is when it takes you unexpected places. I call those fateful detours, FATEFUL. I encourage people to follow their fateful detours. If we have time for a story, I can tell you my most profound fateful detour. Do we have time for it?
I love stories.
All right. So here we go. So I had just finished getting my master's degree in creative writing. And because I had been going to school, I wasn't able to work on my own books. I was in a creative writing program, so I was doing a lot of writing. But when I finished that creative writing program, I decided, okay, no more school. I'm going to be done with school. Now I want to write and send my stuff out for publication. That very time, you talk about, things of 3 coming together at the same time. So as soon as I finished my master's degree, I found that I was getting burnt out on teaching, and it turned out that the librarian at my school was retiring. So the principal offered me the job of librarian, but in order to take the job, I needed to go back to school. And so I told him I would think about it. And he said, you already have your master's degree, don't you? And I said, well, yes, I just got the degree. He said, I think I can put you on an emergency certification and you could take the job immediately. You just need to get the extra hours within the next 18 months. So I said, well, let me think about it. So I went home and I had a good talk with God. And I said, God, you're not listening. I don't want to go back to school. I want to stay home and write and send out for publication. But I also have had enough experience with spiritual journey to know that when an opportunity shows up, that happens so effortlessly and naturally, to follow it. And so I decided, okay, if the principal determines that I can have the job immediately and he offers it to me when I see him the next day, I don't understand, but I'm going to take it. And he offered me the job the next day. So I thought, okay, I've got to go back to school. Now, up to this point, I had just a few books published, but my career had not taken off in any big way. So I went to the University of Houston at Clear Lake for their library science program. 2 women ran that program. One of those women liked the reviews that I wrote for books in her class. She sent those reviews to Booklist, which is the major publication of the American Library Association. And without having an interview, without having to do anything, Booklist hired me to be a reviewer for their national magazine, where I was getting published with 7 bylines in each issue every 2 weeks. So I went from not having any circulation at all to being a prominent reviewer for Booklist magazine. The other woman who ran that library science program had written a book on library programming that had gone out of print. The publisher asked her to write another one. She said, I would only do it if I could write it with somebody else. She asked me if I would write it with her. We sat down to work on that book. We immediately discovered her background was in elementary librarianship. Mine was in secondary. We discovered we didn't have 1 book in us. We had 3 books. Within 6 months of going back to school, which I didn't want to do, I was getting published bi-weekly in one of the most prestigious magazines in the country. And I had a 3-book contract from one of the biggest publishers in the country. Wow. That's a fateful detour.
Wow. And sometimes you just got to go back to school, right?
Well, and it turned out I ended up going back for my PhD later anyway. So never say never.
Right? Oh, my dad used to tell me that all the time. Don't ever say never. And I'd be like, I'm never getting this and I'm never doing that. And he's like, you're going to see that never is going to hit you. And it's going to, you're going to be surprised where that never takes you. But, we don't know unless we try. And unless we fly, we really have to just open those wings and just go for it. That's an amazing story. Like, I never even heard of Booklist, but I'm going to be looking up Booklist because that's what I mean. We learn so much by having open conversations with different people. We find out about different awards, different programs, different services, because sometimes we don't know where to find it. We don't know how to find it. And that's why I have my guests on Teatime, so they can tell me all this good stuff, all these goodies. So you can go and check them out as well if you're tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, be sure to check out all of these incredible things that Dr. Roger Leslie shares tonight. So I want to get in. We have a couple minutes left. We're almost at the hour here. I want to get into, I asked you one word to describe yourself, and you gave me the word positive. Why that word?
I have a rule that I can only say positive, encouraging things, period. Now, admittedly, sometimes I fall short. There are sometimes that I just, I don't really reach that landmark all the time, but that's my objective. So I live in a no complaint zone. It's just like, if something is not working in my life, I think Spirit is trying to show me something, is trying to teach me something. So instead of judging it, if I'll just pay attention and learn, I'll grow as a result. So rather than resisting or fighting the lesson, learn the lesson and I'll move on. So the word positive, I believe, is a good descriptor for me, just because that's my objective. I want to be positive all the time.
And then I asked you what your favorite color was, and you gave me green. Why green?
Yes.
I don't even see green on you tonight.
They're actually, oh no, I don't have any green on me. Well, for one thing I learned, usually I have a green screen behind me, and I learned not to wear green, because if you wear it, at least in my experience, the 1 or 2 times I wore a green shirt and had a green screen behind me, I disappeared. So, but I love the color green because it's just so earthy and so constant, with all the colors of flowers that are available. They're gorgeous and vibrant, and I love them, but they're often temporary. The one color that stays constant in nature is green. The earthiness, the stability, the dependability, and those are qualities that I hope I embody as well. So for that reason, I chose green, and I chose that when I was a very little boy. When I was younger, I liked spring green I like a very bright yellowish green. As I've
Ooh.
gotten older, I've leaned more toward an emerald green. I like a darker, richer green now. But yes, green is still my color.
So I wore the right kind of green. I got emerald green on.
Perfect.
But that's the first time I hear somebody say spring green. Usually it is that dark green or the yellowish green. But that spring green, I like that spring green. I can see that for you. So, Dr. Roger, any final words you'd like to share with everybody out there, and what message would you like to leave everybody tonight with?
So the final thought that I'd like to share relates back to the idea of courage. We really need to live with courage and to move forward. And if you're ever stuck or you're concerned or you're feeling a sense of anxiety, determine what that feeling is about. To be able to distinguish between the fear you feel because you need to be courageous and you need to move forward versus Spirit is telling you, no, not this way, don't do this. When you can distinguish that feeling between the fear of, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to step forward in courage because this is the right thing to do, versus this doesn't feel right. These things aren't coming about in a natural way. Maybe God or the universe or Spirit is trying to tell me not this way. My feeling is God or the universe or Spirit or whatever you call it never says no. The universe either says not now or not this way. So keep moving forward with courage and pay attention to what you're feeling. That little bit of anxiety that goes along with courage is very helpful. It's very energizing. So if that's what you're feeling, then by all means, trust that and move forward. But if the feeling you're feeling is like a sinking feeling in your gut, like this doesn't feel right or I don't trust this, pay attention to that and don't take action on that. But know yourself and understand how your feelings are helping guide you to exactly the point that you want to get. So live the life you dream and have the courage to follow your own spiritual path.
Wow. I see, I said it this morning, courage. The word courage came for everybody, all of my guests today, this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. We really got to just take some courage and just fly. That's what I got from tonight's tea time. We just got to really fly and just, have those fateful detours and just go wherever it takes you. Sometimes it's scary. Trust me. I've been on some flights and I'm like, whoa, slow down. I don't know where you're taking me, but I'm not ready for this, because it comes so fast sometimes that you have to just trust it. You have to have that fateful detour. You have to have faith in where it's taking you.
Yes.
So I really want to thank you, Dr. Roger, for just sitting and having tea with me and just sharing a good insight on transformation, empowerment, inspiration, some of the incredible words that you've won and just your journey in life. Continue to do what you're doing, continue to flow. I can't wait to see where else you go, with your new books and what you have coming in the future. So if anybody would like to reach you, how can they reach you?
They could just go to my website, which is just my name, rogerleslie.com, ROGERLESLIE. They can email me directly from my website if they have a specific question about anything, about being published, about needing a writing coach, about doing personal growth. Anything they need, they can catch me there.
And if anybody would like to get your books, where can they get those?
They're available everywhere, Barnes & Noble, online through Amazon. If they go to my website, there's a books tab in my website, and that'll take you to the direct links to all the different places that sell my books.
And the Fly program, how can they get into that?
They can learn more about it on my website. There's a Fly tab there, and I give them intermittently. I'm following Spirit. Right now, I'm not offering any. The last ones I offered, the last sessions ended in January, and I'm not sure when the next ones are coming up, but I'm following Spirit's guidance to tell me when to offer them again. So just keep an eye on my website. And if they sign up for my email list, then I'll give them updates so they'll get more information when I'm offering the courses again.
Awesome. And I want to thank you again. It was a pleasure sitting and having tea with you. Even with technology, with us all choppy, our voices still came through, the message still came through, and we still served a good, strong cup of tea together. I want to thank Mickey Mickelson from Creative Edge for giving me Dr. Roger Leslie. Check out Creative Edge. They have incredible client list there as well. And if you'd like to have Dr. Roger Leslie on your podcast, reach out to him through his website or through Mickey Mickelson and sign them up, because I'm sure you will enjoy the conversation with Dr. Roger Leslie. And I will see everybody next week on the 13th with 3 new teas and 3 new guests. So until then, I will see everybody 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. on July 13th. And I wish you all a good evening and keep serving your tea.